Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film a recent reads video. These are all of the books that I have so far completed in the month of December. I have been leaning really heavily into genre fiction for the month, so I have quite a few books to go through, and I want to try to keep this quite short, so it's going to be attempting to be brief. Let's see how I can do. The first book is Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells. This is a book in the Murderbot science fiction series. I really enjoy this series. I find the sarcastic humor to be right up my alley. I buddy read this one with Britta Bowler, and it is like book 4.5 in the series, I think. It's a novella, so it's quite short, and it follows the adventures of the SEC unit that we know as Murderbot on Preservation Station, which is a station in outer space, and the Murderbot there's been a murder, and he, or they, I should say, because we don't know, it's not gendered being, being a augmented robot / some organic parts type of a being, but there's been a murder, and Murderbot cannot use their normal tech-heavy methodology to solve the murder. In fact, has to go old school and do actual, like, really, boots on the ground type investigating. And I thought it was really great. I thought it was an excellent entry into the series, and I really enjoyed my time spent with that one. But you definitely need to start with the first book in the series, All Systems Red. You can't just jump in here, I would say. The next thing I read was a romance novel, and this is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This is the follow-up to her book, Part of Your World. It involves different characters, but the couple from the first book do show up because the female character from the first book is best friends with the female character in this book. So we're following Brianna, who is an emergency room doctor, and she's having a bad time of it. Her brother is really ill and needs a kidney transplant, and a new doctor arrives in her hospital. She's angling for a promotion, and she thinks that this new doctor has been brought there to basically supersede her and take the job that she wants. So they don't hit it off, like they start off on the wrong foot. What I enjoyed about this book the most was the fact that bad feelings are not allowed to fester between the main characters. People talk things out, which is so refreshing. It's one thing I really love about Abby Jimenez's books. Like the adults act like adults and have actual conversations with each other. And something that was super cute about this particular book is in the beginning, when the two characters are getting to know each other, they leave each other notes, write text messages, write emails, leave actual paper notes, and they get to know each other through this sort of epistolary style, which I love. I really love that device in a novel. I will also say this book delves pretty heavily into some mental health issues, so just be aware of that. The male character, who is Jacob, has real bad anxiety issues that he deals with every day, and Brianna is really great in helping him deal with that, but she has her own issues to deal with, which come to the front at the second part of the book. But I thought it was really well done. I enjoyed my time spent with it. I ended up sobbing at the end of the book, so it really hit hard for me emotionally, this story. So I really have found a new author to follow very closely in Abby Jimenez. The next thing I finished was another cozy read. This is cozy fantasy. It is Bookshops and Bonedust by Travis Baldree, which is the prequel to his book from last year, Legends and Lattes, which I also read in December and very much enjoyed. These are low-stake fantasy novels. And in this particular installment, we follow our main character, Viv. Is she an orc or an ogre? I can't remember. I can't remember if she's an orc or an ogre, but one or the other. Anyway, she's a mercenary, but she's been injured on the job, and she has to recuperate in this small town. She doesn't want to be there. She wants to be back with her mercenary group, but she has to stay there for several weeks while her injuries heal up. And in the course of this week, she encounters several different characters in the town and forms connections with them, one of whom is the owner of this bookshop. really cozy, really great characters, just a lovely, lovely time. It's just a book that you need, if you want pure escapist reading, if your mind is all over the place the way mine is in December, and you want something to like settle down with and just really escape into a fun story where it's all going to come right in the end, this is a great one. I thought the characters were great. There's one new character. There's a bunch of new characters in this book. Viv is the only character from the previous book. There's one character in particular, I won't spoil, comes into the story quite, like maybe halfway through, that I thought was fantastic. I really love that character. There is a bad thing to deal with, and Viv has to, draw on some of her mercenary skills to deal with that. But mostly it's a story of friendship and how people can support one another, and it's just lovely. It's just lovely. And it's also a love song to books and reading, so how can you go wrong? I don't think that this one was as good for me personally as Legends and Lattes, but I still very much enjoyed my time with it. And I'm glad I read it. The next thing I completed was a nonfiction book, The Sound of the Sea by Cynthia Barnett, which I talked about quite a bit in my mid-month book bash vlog, so I won't go into it very much here, except to say it's nonfiction about the natural history of mollusks, in particular things like conchs and whelks and other types of creatures that build shells around their bodies, and how humans have utilized those shells throughout history. So it's kind of a combination of science writing and history writing, and I thought it was really fascinating and really enjoyable. I buddy read it with Rachel, and we both enjoyed our time spent with it. If you like that mix of science and history together in your nonfiction, I think this one's a great choice. It's like sort of low stakes nonfiction, something you can read and not feel like the world is burning down around you. So if you're looking for something like that, I can highly recommend The Sound of the Sea. The next thing I completed was a mystery novel. This is In the Presence of the Enemy by Elizabeth George. This is a book in the Inspector Lynley mystery series. Inspector Lynley is a police detective in England. These books, this particular book, the early books in this series were written in the 1990s, so I think this is like book 7 in the series. So sometimes there's a little bit of datedness in it, but it's surprising to me how well these books have held up over time. And the main characters that we follow throughout the book series are all here in this installment. I will say one of the differences with this particular one is the first maybe 200 pages of it, Inspector Lynley and Havers, his partner, Byra Havers, they are not in it at all. In fact, it's the secondary characters, the friends, Lynley's friends, St. James and Deborah and Helen, who are investigating the disappearance of a child. The parents have gotten a kidnapper's note that this 11-year-old girl has been kidnapped, and the mom is a high-up politician in British government, and she thinks it has to do with the girl's father, who she is estranged from, who is the father is a prominent newspaper journalist, but from one of the what are those called? Like National Enquirer type papers, like the papers that print all the salacious gossip type of a thing. And so there's a lot of bad blood between the two of them. So it's the story of trying to figure out, has this girl really been kidnapped? If so, who's kidnapped her? Eventually Lynley and Havers do get involved. It is a harrowing ride. This book was, deals with some difficult topics. So if that is something that you need to be concerned about, you should probably look up what this is about and look for anything that might be of concern to you. But I really enjoy these mystery books, and I read them. I've been reading them with Britta Bowler, and we both we love the characters, and we really enjoy the way that Elizabeth George puts together a mystery. She has tons of red herrings in her mysteries. I never can figure them out. Britta is much better at it than I am in terms of figuring out what's going on and who's doing what. But this one did not turn out the way that I expected it to at all. And I thought it was really, really well done. So it is, but if you do have trouble with harm to children in your books, just be forewarned that this one might be difficult for you. The next thing I finished was another mystery, this time a historical mystery. This is Revelation by CJ Sansom. This is the fourth book, I think, in the Matthew Shardlake series, which takes place in the 1540s during the reign of King Henry VIII. And Matthew Shardlake is a lawyer. And what's happening in this particular installment in the series is that another lawyer has been murdered in a very public way, and Matthew gets drawn in to that murder. And in trying to investigate that, he gets kind of sucked into more royal politics than he would like. And it seems like he may be on the hunt for a serial killer. And how they figure that out, and the historical detail in these novels is fabulous. The other thing that's happened is there's been a great fish that's washed up in the River Thames. The River Thames has been iced over during the winter, and as it begins to break up in the spring, this giant fish is discovered. And the people believe that this is, an event with portents for the world. Is this, a sign that the world is going to end? Is this a sign of, all these different ideas that people have of what this giant fish washing up portends? Plus, they don't know what the giant fish is, because nobody knows in the 1500s what this thing is. So that's really interesting. Plus, all the details of what life was like in the 1540s in and around London. What it was like for the common people, what it was like for, the workaday people, the lawyers, the barristers, the people like that, and then what it was like for the royalty, the aristocracy. I really enjoy the characters. I enjoy the historical setting. I was unsure what was going on with the mystery for a great deal of this book. I will say for once in my life, I did guess. I did guess correctly who the bad guy was. And I was so proud of myself, because that never happens. I am really, really bad at guessing who the bad guy is in a mystery. Really enjoyed my time spent with this. I buddy read this one with Doris. She and I have been very slowly reading this series of books. So I think we will probably pick up the next one a little bit more quickly than between this one and book number 3, which we let several years go by. I think we'll go a little bit more quickly now, because we're both pretty invested in the main character here. Matthew Shardlake is a great character. So that was that. I need to turn the page in my book journal. There's a couple more. I then completed a reread. This was my reread for the month of December. This is The Hobbit by JRR Tolkien. I have read this book, I don't know how many times I've actually read it. I think the first time I read it, I was probably 9 years old. And this book and the subsequent Lord of the Rings series are formative books for me. I mean, these books, every time I read them, take me away to the world of Middle-earth and to being in these group of characters as one of their companions on their journeys and on their adventures. There are no other books that I know that transport me so thoroughly as J.R.R. Tolkien's books. And it did not disappoint this reread. The Hobbit is, I think, a little bit more in terms of age range, is a little bit more YA than the Lord of the Rings books, but it's still super enjoyable. And if you want something a little bit shorter, this one's only 250 pages, so it's definitely much more achievable than the Lord of the Rings books, which are chunkers. But we're following Bilbo Baggins as he gets sucked into an adventure with a group of dwarfs and Gandalf the wizard. They have to go deal with a dragon who has destroyed a dwarf community and the communities of men around a mountain. The dwarfs that come and include Bilbo in their partnership are determined to deal with this dragon and take back their wealth and take back their mountain. And Bilbo is brought along as the burglar to help them sneak in and deal with this dragon. Lots of adventures ensue. They encounter elves. They encounter other kinds of magical beings. And it's just a delightful time. It is so much fun. There is harrowing bits as well. There are battle scenes. There are incredible animals. There's just everything that you would want in a high fantasy novel is in The Hobbit. All packed in this nice little short package. I really love it. I particularly love this edition of The Hobbit with this cover. I think it's so beautiful. And The Hobbit is not my favorite of the group of books that make up the stories of the Middle-earth, but I really thoroughly enjoyed my time spent with this one. So glad that I picked it up for a reread. And I have Kim from Middle of the Book March to thank for that, because she had decided she was going to reread The Hobbit for this month. So I was like, oh, I have to do that too. So here I did it. I'm so pleased with myself that I actually did what I wanted to do with a reread. And then last but not least, I finished last night in the middle of the night when I had insomnia, The Duke's Children by Anthony Trollope. This is the last book in the Palliser series of novels that he wrote in the mid-1800s. And this book, like his last book in the Barset Chronicles novels, ties together the whole series, which has been the overarching character throughout the series has been Plantagenet Palliser, who is the Duke, and who has been heavily involved in politics and Parliament. And in this book, a very shocking event happens in the very first chapter, which I will not spoil for you. I did not know it was coming, and I was shocked. I tell you, I was absolutely shocked at what happened. And this is the last book in a series, and you need to read the other books in order to understand the characters in this book. But I thought it was great how this book ties it all together for Plantagenet Palliser. It's about his children, his grown children. He has 2 boys and a girl, and he has very specific ideas of what it means to be a duke and what it means to be duke's children and what it means to be a member of the aristocracy and what your responsibilities, where they lie and where your responsibilities to your parents lie. And his children just do not look at the world the same way that he does. And so throughout this book, they get into multiple scrapes. Their love lives are messed up. They're not what the Duke wants. None of them are following the precepts that he's laid down for them. They are all just, determined to do their own things and to follow their own paths. And the Duke just doesn't know how to deal with that at all. So he's really struggling. And I just really enjoyed it. I thought this was probably the most tightly plotted story of the bunch. And all of the characters were really well realized, and I very much enjoyed my time spent with this book. And I thought it was a really well done in terms of tying up the whole series, and probably was my favorite book in the entire series. And I will say it probably had the least amount of politics in it as any of the other books, except for maybe the Eustace Diamonds. But there was very little politics in this book, and I have to say I enjoy Anthony Trollope a lot more when there's less, chapters devoted to Parliament and parliamentary maneuvering amongst all the different characters. The other thing I would say about Anthony Trollope is he has fantastic character names, and so you'll definitely get a chuckle out of some of his character names. So really glad to have finally finished up the Palliser series right here before the end of the year, so that I can cross that one off my Mooks and Gripes bucket list, which is the Palliser series was on there. So fantastic for me to be able to complete another one on that list. So that's what I've read so far in December. I don't know if I will finish any more before the end of the year. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I wanted to wrap these ones up here now. I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read. I will talk to you later.